Hey, if you're like me and you're one of those people who feels like you're missing something in life and you're yearning for something, it's hard to explain. Well, welcome to the premiere podcast episode as we walk with Sister Jeanne Clark of the Dominican Sisters of Amityville right here on Long Island. I just read her book called All the Way In. Fantastic read, especially for our day and time. What a fantastic role model. What a great storyteller. And I really got to see the life of social justice and helping our neighbor through her eyes. And I think you're going to enjoy it as well. Come, walk with us and join the conversation. This is Steve Yusko, and I am here with a fabulous guest. And we're going all the way in with Sister Jeanne Clark. Sister, welcome to the podcast, this premiere episode.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Yeah, I think this is the first podcast I've ever been on, actually.
I hope many more. So, Sister Margaret was so generous to give me your book, All the Way In. So one of the things that resonated with me about the book, All the Way In, was your life. When I read your story and your activism, and the subtitle is a story of activism, incarceration, and organic farming. It seemed so amazing to me.
Well, it was amazing to me too, how it all just came about.
Yeah, so I remember in the book, you really say you're not much of a writer per se, but more of a storyteller. So tell me how the book came about.
Oh, that's a story in itself. Well, I love Thomas Berry. I don't know if you know Thomas Berry.
Only through your book.
The Passionist priest who has told the whole story of the universe and given it to us with spiritual language that makes it come so alive. So anywhere where people are speaking about him or he was speaking, I attend. So there was a conference in Washington, D.C. for Thomas Berry. He has since been deceased, but it was about his work. And I wanted to go there, but then I started pricing the hotels in Washington, D.C. It was just too expensive.
Yeah, astronomical.
So I tried to find a cheaper way of housing there. And I knew that Mary Evelyn Tucker was organizing it. And so I called her and I asked her, did she know of a place? She directed me to this woman, Carol Sargent. And she's a professor at Georgetown. And she helps people write books, actually. And I didn't know her at all, but she was just beginning this house. And on the bookshelf there was a picture of Anne Montgomery. I don't know if you know Anne, but she's another sister who was resisting the Trident submarine here on the East Coast. And I knew Anne pretty well. And so I said to Carol, oh, you know Anne Montgomery? And she said, no, but I know sisters who know her, and they were telling me about her. So then I started telling a story about Anne. And Carol, the next morning, asked me at breakfast before we went to the conference, would you tell the story again that you told last night? I said, well, do we have time? She said, yeah.
Okay.
And so I told the story again. And then she said, would you ever mind recording your stories? Because I just did, but if you don't want to, I'll erase it. I said, no, that's fine.
Sure.
That began a couple of years of going on Zoom with Carol and just telling one story after another. And I had no idea it would become a book, but that's what happened.
Wonderful. I tell you, for me, timing is everything. I believe there are no coincidences. And for what's happening in our country today, word jumped out, and I don't recall it was in your book. You're a real troublemaker, aren't you? Good trouble. Right?
Yeah,
and
good trouble.
What I love about your book, it spoke to me about what's going on today, and the conversations that I have with my daughter Faith and my wife Debbie is, we have a lot of angst about what's happening in the country, how people are being devalued, continuing to be devalued, the immigrant, and what's happening seems to be, see Germany, I could say it.
Yeah.
And what we struggle with is, what can we do? So tell me about your experience in activism and social justice and what it meant for you as a sister to put things on the line and go out and do this.
Well, if you remember, I think it's the first chapter of the book, actually, because it's not just activism, it's being an active contemplative, I think, because it comes out of a deep spirituality. And in the beginning of the book, I explain that where I heard this call to resistance was at the Priory in Western Vermont. I think it was in the late 70s at that time. It's a long story, and anybody who wants to know the whole story could read my book on it. But
good point.
I didn't want to leave the chapel where the monks, the brothers were praying. It was very early morning prayer.
Right.
And so I waited till the brothers left, and I just kept sitting there meditating. And for some reason, I don't know if it was the reading of the day, but the meditation was about Moses and the burning bush.
Okay.
And I was asking myself the question, what did he go close to that was the burning bush, the fire? And so then I went to the bookcase, and this book, actually, it felt as if it jumped out into my hand.
Right. I remember reading that.
Yeah, because it may have been the title.
Okay.
The title was called Resistance and Contemplation by James Douglas. I had never knew of Jim Douglas at that time. But I read the whole book that morning, and it wasn't a large book, probably the size of my book, actually, paperback. But I was very, very moved by the book. And in the book is the question, how far in do you want to go? How far into liberation? And I think he was actually quoting an album or cover of Dylan's, one of his songs. And one of the people said in this dream state, just far enough in to say I've been there.
Interesting.
And the answer came back, no, that's not liberation. You have to go all the way in.
All the way in.
And I came back from that time, and I went to my congregation of sisters who were in leadership.
Right.
And told them that I felt this call to resist what was happening, especially this submarine that was being built.
The Trident.
The Trident submarine.
Yeah.
We met for about an hour. I did have a plan when I went in about how it would happen, because I knew I would need that.
Right.
Of where I would live, how I would get, do all of this. And this community said, yes, go.
That I find very remarkable.
Yes.
In that my experience with the overall church is don't go on social media, don't speak out, stay in your lane. And this is maybe more of a diocesan thing from my history. So I was not shocked, but I was very happy to see that they supported your efforts.
Well, absolutely. My community sent me a check every month, not a large one, because I had to get a part-time job to support myself. And yes, they supported me all the way.
They supported you all the way in.
Yeah.
Now, I got another question for you, because this always puzzled me as well. I've read Tom Merton, right? And being a novice, the contemplative state, being a monk or, people in contemplation, I didn't know what drew people to that. It almost, to me, to be very frank, looked like retreating from the world, getting maybe into your inner spirituality. But what does that do for the world? So explain that to me.
Yeah, but you can see in Merton. Well, you can see in Merton what it did for the world. He was staying in that monastery, but people were coming, and he was counseling all kinds of people, especially the peacemaker people.
Right.
And so I think, so your question is
what attracted you to the contemplative life and becoming a nun and being a sister and that sort of thing?
Well, it's very hard to describe it, but it has something to do with wanting more or going deeper. That somehow, because I was very active in the world, I worked for an advertising agency, and I had many dates and things like that. But there was something in me that wanted more. And I had been to Amityville because I had done some retreats. I forget, they had a retreat center, not at the mother house, but a retreat center on the property that I had attended, and I had been in the chapel. And I know that I keep remembering going into that chapel, which is a very old one. It was built, I think, in the 1840 something, and or probably not 1870s maybe. And the novices were coming in, and it was just something about that place and the silence.
Right.
Thomas Berry, he also went to the monastery, and he used to kid about it because he said he was really a deep thinker, and he was trying to figure things out. He said, and I knew the only place to do that would be either in jail or in the monastery. And he chose the monastery.
Right. Both having two types of cells, right?
Yes. So to be with oneself, to be in prayer, to be in community, and to go deeper into the self. I think that's what it was all about.
And that brings me to another question, and it's look at, if you can, explain to me the mission of the Sisters of St. Dominic. who's going to pick up the torch? What persons are going to do that? Continue the work.
Well, our motto in the Dominican order is veritas, truth. And Dominic, actually, in the time when the founding of the brothers and sisters was happening, there was a heresy that was telling people, and people were preaching, that matter was evil.
The things of the earth were evil.
So he began his order to combat that and to have the preaching tell the truth, that matter was not evil. So if you transfer that to today, and of course where the truth is, and especially in our culture here in the United States right now, people are very, very confused. Where is the truth? What happened to the truth? It seems like there's so many lies and untruths. And so to preach the truth today would be, as a Dominican, the mission of all missions, to tell the truth. So, for example, I know I keep hearing about people being snatched off the street and put into prison.
The tough.
Yeah, and so I've been, as you may know from my book, I lived for 5 years with the Salvadoran refugees.
Yes.
And it was the most beautiful time of my life. I could cry just thinking of it. So much happened in that house.
Yeah.
And the people were so beautiful. They had suffered so deeply. So I know immigrants. I know their names. I know I don't know all immigrants. But
Right.
I know. And so I know when they keep being defined as criminals, that is not the truth.
Right.
So to tell the truth about immigration right now is important.
I agree 100%. I was in the seminary with two guys who became deacons who, at least one I know, did the migration from El Salvador. And to me, it really put a face to the story. And that gets back to that. There's so many stories that need to be heard, need to be told, to put a face to the victims, the people who were impacted by litigation and the throwaway culture that we have and consumerism.
You did ask about who's going to do this when we're not around. Because, when I entered the convent, we were 1,700.
Really?
And, we could fill that huge chapel. And today I think we're in the 200 somewhere, I'm not sure. So, yes, that's a big question that we keep asking in the congregation. How will this charism go forth? So, if we begin to preach the truth, if we preach the truth
right
here on Long Island, where we are or wherever we are, and people are attracted to us because they find that truth to be true, or whatever we're doing, that people get attracted to us. And they don't need to actually become a sister. Like we have associates, we have young adults.
All different roles to be filled.
All different ways. And who knows in the future, other people. And so I think that definitely that charism of people telling the truth will continue.
I'm learning a heck of a lot, but there's so much to uncover and unpack, one with your book, but I'm really intrigued that you had this plan to go, I'll bring people up to speed. You were concerned about the Trident submarine, actually?
Yes, probably.
So tell me what struck me when I was reading this. I was thinking about St. Paul being in a Roman jail, who's out there trying to tell the truth and wondering, praying to God, what am I going to do here? And I think he converted the guard, and he was there.
Yeah. Well, my first experience in Washington, D.C. was in the D.C. jail.
Okay.
Because I had gone to the Pentagon, and it was, and I had poured blood on the plaque that said Department of Defense. It was Good Friday.
Oh, wow.
And the community chanted, the people with me there in the community, "This is the blood of the poor. This is the blood of El Salvador. This is the blood of Christ." Because we knew that the plans in the Pentagon were plans about a country like El Salvador, where we were really conducting a war there.
Right, by proxy. Yeah.
And crucifying people, trying to make that real. And so then I was arrested there for that. My father was, as you might have seen in the book, was a city detective.
Okay.
Grew up with the police department, And so he, actually, my friend Margaret went to tell him that I had been arrested in D.C. And he said to her, "I think she has lost her mind." And I take that, and I say that in the book, that in some way he was speaking the truth, because I had lost one mind and I had taken on another.
Right.
Learning about different injustices and so forth. So in the jail, of course, I was there with all these women who most of their crimes, at least the ones that I came to know, were either prostitution or signing bad checks.
Right.
They were always talking about their children and worried about their children, and probably what they had done was for their children.
Right, right.
So, and I was fasting. So I was able to, when we would go into where we were eating our meals, I would go there, give my tray away, to somebody. So that would give a chance, too, to get to know people.
Sure.
And so some of the women asked me to pray with them because I told them who I was and what I had done. And so, that piece of it was learning from the people there, really. They were really teaching me a lot.
Really? Yeah.
Because I would have never been with folks like that if I hadn't been in jail. I mean, surrounded by them.
Let me ask you, Jeanne, when you first were incarcerated, did fear come over you? I mean, because there's all these stereotypes in your mind, or in my mind, about violence, trying to be dominant, so, nobody screws around with you, that sort of thing. What was it like for you?
Well,
bring me back to that.
Yeah, well,
moment.
From the court, because I went to court first, and because I was living in Tennessee at that time, so I didn't want to go back there and come back. So I asked to go right where they were going to send me. And so we went to court first. And when I was finished testifying in the court, the person, I went to the back, and this man put shackles on my ankles.
Oh, my gosh.
And my wrists, and then I was chained around the waist, and the wrists were chained to the
belt.
Waist, and you couldn't walk very well because you had these chains on your feet. And I said to him, well, sir, why are you doing that? Do you think I'm violent? And he said, oh, no, ma'am, I heard you out there. And I said, well, why are you doing that? He said, it's just my job. I have to do it. So that's the way I went to jail in that,
Okay. Wow.
So that was a little disturbing,
say the least.
But I must say, and I wonder about it myself, I never experienced fear in the prison.
Interesting.
Ever.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, maybe one night it was frightening because I think one of the women had done something. I don't know what she was being punished for. But she went into her cell. I don't know how she got a match, but she lit her mattress on fire. And, those vinyl mattresses have a lot of toxic.
Yeah, sure.
And so that smoke was all around, and you were locked in,
Right.
And so you don't really know, and there's a lot of commotion happening. So that was very frightening. I just took a washcloth or something and
kept it over your face.
On my face with wet. But other than that, it was I made a horarium. We used to, in the convent, you call it horarium,
Okay.
The order of the day.
Right. Yeah.
I did that for myself. I knew that in the morning, I do some time of meditation and reading. And
gave yourself a schedule.
And, of course, it's very noisy.
That's the other thing, coming from Vermont and that place of contemplation to constant noise, right?
The hardest thing of all. Constant music, actually, loud music, lots of noise. And so I was treating it almost like a retreat,
Interesting.
where I was in, and I explained this in the book. We used to call our room in the convent a cell.
Right. Yeah.
And now I was in a cell, and we used to have two habits, one in the wash and one to wear. Yeah. And now I didn't have to think anything about clothes. I had this one jumpsuit to wear, no question about what to put on. So those things were familiar, in a different sense, but really connected in some way, You know
what's interesting? The theme of what's going to move forward with the podcast is that we walk together. Right. And you walked with people who were incarcerated and got their stories and got to walk their walk and hear their talk. And I can't help but think of people listening to this podcast now. And we mentioned it before, that yearning that's in your heart, silence and contemplation really kind of opens up a flower to more possibilities, and listening to the Holy Spirit and to yourself as well, and making these type of connections. And if there's anything, I'll get on my soapbox for a minute, is in serving others. There's no other great, I think, there's no other great joy to get you out of your problems than to serve somebody else, because the focus becomes off of you.
Yeah. But in a sense, I had more resources than the women there, and I had chosen to go to jail. Not that because I knew that from my action that's where I would go. They didn't choose it,
Right.
so it was a whole different experience for them.
Right.
And that's what I was learning a lot. As you said, their stories. When you hear a person's story, and I had heard many, because when I was a campus minister at Long Island University, there was a program there for parolees who had come from prison and were released early in order to attend the university there. And I was the campus minister, so often they would end up committing a crime and be back in the court, and I would go with them. And in court, you spend a lot of time waiting. I would hear all their stories, how they, what their life was like when they were growing up. And again, I would have never known those folks in that story. So that was really a grace.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of this, of Jesus, because he was always hanging out with the poor people, those with the least resources, because for some reason, that's where you discover the truth.
Right.
If you want to really know a culture, a society, go to the places that the tour business doesn't go.
Right. They're off the beaten track.
Then you'll know what that city is really about.
Yeah. And you brought something up that kind of resonated with me that I continually try to work on, and that's being present to somebody.
Yeah.
Active listening and understanding, and the follow-up of why did that happen and what are you going to do next? Those are the interesting points, but the fact that you're able to be present to somebody and have them speak to you.
Yeah.
They may not always get that, in whatever situation that they're in.
Right.
Nice. Very nice.
But sometimes we think we're going to help them. But I found that in El Salvador. When I went to accompany them from the refugee camp in Honduras back to Salvador, I thought I was accompanying them, but really that's when I discovered the importance of land. I had no understanding of that before, because if you grow up on Long Island, you don't really have a knowledge of the land.
Right.
It's like shopping centers and cement and, trees and grass, but you don't really think about the land. And it was the Salvadoran people who really taught me about the land, because they are a land-based people.
Meaning agrarian?
Yes, knowing the soil, knowing the land, going back to the land. And when I think of the United States, I had never thought about the land. So that was, they really accompanied me in a journey home in that sense. So we really accompany each other. It's, and as you said, we all have the stories. We're all journeying together.
Right. And
accompanying each other. And today, that means a whole great deal of what that means to accompany people today.
So that opens up, for those who have that interest in social justice and social work and helping our fellow man, I think one of the best phrases that I hear is when somebody says, "Come walk with me." Jesus said it so many times, had different inferences of following a rabbi and becoming a disciple. But, you don't have to qualify.
Yeah.
You just have to walk and listen and take it in and commune with each other. And that's where I think is what I find so attractive to the charism of your order and the next phase. That really takes what you've done and pulls lay people into the project. And where you're saying, if I'm right, is, hey, come walk with us. You have so much to offer, and tell us about your struggles and how you've worked through things, because you've walked the walk, and today we need it. Absolutely. You can look, I try not to get too involved in the news, but there's no doubt that there's a need to help our fellow man in all sorts of capacities, the poor, the migrant, the immigrant, the incarcerated. Right. It's really.
And then the other piece of the order, the Dominicans have always been connected to science. We have the great scientists within the order, and belief in science, that which is another connection with truth. The scientist is trying to discover the truth, the reality, is how things are. And in today's world, where science is being denied really. But it's the new science that led me in another direction.
How's that?
Well, understanding the story of the universe, because now we know with the big telescopes and all kinds of technology, we can know from the very beginning from where we come, our origin. And the beautiful part of it is it's the origin of everything. So my story is the same as the story of the tree, of the rivers, of the animals, and of every other human being. We all have the same story. We all begin with the beginning of the universe.
Right.
And then understanding and studying that whole story of what had happened in the universe for all the creation to come to its peak.
Right.
It's an inspiring story. Between that and my connection with the land, with the Salvadorans, that's when I began to see, and I studied then at Genesis Farm with Sister Miriam McGillis, to see how important the land was. And the reason that we are having so many difficulties is because we're disconnected from the earth.
Interesting.
Which is really to say we're disconnected from ourselves.
Right.
So coming back to that, and of course I'm still going through that, which will continue for the rest of my life, trying to understand that more deeply, on a deeper and deeper level. And so that's when we began the farm at the Mother House.
Over 25 years ago, from what I understand, right?
And connecting, it wasn't just about vegetables, although that was important, growing, but it was important to get connected to the earth.
Right.
So growing up on Long Island, I never knew the seasons of the vegetables, what vegetables grew, all the insects, but when you're there, and then when the children would come, to be learning, teaching the children.
Right.
That this is a whole community. It's not just human community.
Right. You've got the bees and the ants.
It's the hawk. It's the sun. It's a whole community of life that we belong to, which is transformational, really. Transformation we need today.
Right.
Understand that, which means we're connected to everyone.
What's interesting to me is the connection between religion, spirituality, and science. Mm-hmm. Go back centuries, and it was, if we're for that, then you're against God, and the world is really flat, it's not round, and so on. And we know the truth, but there are a lot of there's a great Jesuit who was discovered
Jeanne.
Yeah, okay.
The Jesuit.
Yeah.
And it's the opposite of the science disconnecting us from the world. It's entering into the world more deeply. So Teilhard would begin to know through his science and to teach us that the world is full of God. Imagine.
Right.
To wake up in the morning and to know that the world is full of God. You might sound crazy in today's world because most people are saying, no, the world is full of lies and destruction. Well, that's there. But the world is full of God because God is in all matter.
Right, exactly.
And so instead of looking for God up there, and somehow when you say go deeper, you're discovering the God within.
Within, right?
In ourselves and within the earth.
And you know what? That discovery brings an excellent perspective, and it's a good practice of counting your blessings. I get to meet people like you, and that's a true blessing. And once you have that, when you embrace that perspective and find God in these blessings, there's nothing that can stop you, and you can walk together and really grow together, and you can set the world on fire.
Right. And it doesn't take away the pain.
No, there's always, right.
Matter of fact, it could intensify it because you're realizing that we are, as Thomas Berry would say, with every extinction, we are extinguishing a face of the divine. And so this is a spiritual problem.
Right.
Climate change is not just about climate and science of it, but it's a spiritual problem.
Right.
Because we're eliminating the beauty of God. Each one of the species, or to pollute the water. I mean, I go down to the Great South Bay every day almost.
Nice.
Because it is the watershed of Homecoming Farm. And I would teach the children that anything we do here goes right into the
Right.
watershed, And so I know what's going into that watershed, with everything that.
Plastics and, oh gosh, I can go on and on about that.
And so I just want to be with that bay in a different mode of connection.
Right.
Because I know the native people who knew that bay as life.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And now just imagine to think that you can put toxins in the water.
It's not going to affect.
And so, that produces grief.
Right.
You love it so much, So when I say that the world is full of God, it doesn't mean everything's happy.
Right.
Beautiful, because life is both.
Right. You have to, if everything is a gift, suffering is a gift as well that can lead to many, many good things as well. It doesn't take away the suffering.
Right.
But it can change your perspective on things. There's a quote I want to read, and I'd like to wrap up on this because it really struck me. And it's by Richard Falk.
Richard Falk, yeah.
And he said,
he was a professor of international law.
Okay. And when we talk about truth and the importance of truth, he stated that when your country is involved in a crime, it's not only your right, but your duty to protest. That's the times that we're in, to get active.
Yeah.
And to take our charisms, look into the Sisters of St. Dominic and moving forward. What a pleasure to meet you after reading your book. It's really been, I thank you for.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be with you.
All right. Till next time, everybody. Take care.